Why has America still not retired the B-2 Spirit? If you were the commander of the United States Air Force, and you had a bomber nearly 70 years old sitting on your runway, what would you do? Would you retire it? Send it to a museum? Or continue sending it into combat? It sounds unbelievable, but in 2026, the United States still operates the B-52 Stratofortress, an aircraft that first flew before humans ever reached the moon. And even more astonishing, it still flies missions alongside one of the most advanced bombers ever built, the B-2 Spirit, a stealth aircraft worth billions of dollars, designed to penetrate the most sophisticated air defense systems on Earth. Think about that for a moment. One bomber was born in the 1950s. The other emerged from the secret technology programs of the late Cold War. One relies on overwhelming firepower. The other relies on near invisibility. One looks like a flying fortress. The other resembles something from the future. And yet, both remain critical to America's military strategy. That raises an important question. If the B-2 is so advanced, why hasn't it replaced the B-52? And if the B-52 is still so effective, why did America spend billions developing stealth bombers in the first place? Or perhaps these two aircraft were never competitors at all. Perhaps they were designed to fight completely different wars. One built for nuclear deterrence, the other built for penetrating modern air defenses. One built to survive through endurance, the other built to survive through stealth. This is the story of two legends, the old giant and the stealth ghost. Two bombers separated by generations, yet united by one mission, projecting American air power across the globe. Today, Eagle War Machine takes you deep into the history, technology, and battlefield reality of these iconic aircraft to uncover the truth behind a mystery that continues to fascinate military analysts around the world. Why is the B-2 Spirit still flying, and why does the B-52 refuse to die? The answers may surprise you. Why has America still not retired the B-2 Spirit? Two bombers born for two different wars. To understand why the B-2 Spirit still exists, we must first understand why it was created. And to understand that, we must begin with the aircraft that came before it, the legendary B-52 Stratofortress. The year was 1952. The Cold War was growing darker. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a global struggle for power. Both sides were building nuclear weapons. Both sides were preparing for a conflict they hoped would never happen. America needed an aircraft capable of doing something extraordinary, flying across continents, carrying massive nuclear payloads, and striking targets deep inside enemy territory. The answer became the B-52 Stratofortress, a bomber unlike anything the world had ever seen. 8 engines, intercontinental range, enormous payload capacity, and the ability to remain airborne for hours or even days with aerial refueling. For decades, the B-52 became the backbone of America's strategic deterrent. It was not designed to sneak into enemy airspace. It was designed to overwhelm it. Its philosophy was simple: carry more bombs, fly farther, strike harder. But as the decades passed, a dangerous problem emerged. Radar technology improved. Surface-to-air missiles became deadlier. Integrated air defense networks began covering entire regions. Suddenly, being big and powerful was no longer enough, because if enemy defenses could see you coming hundreds of miles away, you might never reach your target. America faced a new reality. The next war would not be won by size alone. It would require something entirely different: stealth. Military planners began imagining an aircraft that could do what no aircraft had done before. Not outrun radar, not destroy radar, but simply disappear from it. This revolutionary concept eventually led to one of the secret military programs ever undertaken, the B-2 Spirit. But the B-2 was designed for a completely different battlefield, a battlefield protected by advanced missile systems, sophisticated radar networks, and heavily defended strategic targets. While the B-52 relied on payload and endurance, the B-2 relied on invisibility and precision. This is why comparing the two aircraft can be misleading, because they were never created for the same mission. The B-52 was born from the nuclear standoff of the Cold War. The B-2 was born from the challenge of penetrating modern air defenses. One represented overwhelming force, the other represented technological superiority. And yet, both survived, both remained relevant, and both continue serving side by side in the United States Air Force. Which raises an even bigger question. If the B-2 is so advanced, why doesn't America simply replace the B-52? And if the B-52 remains so useful, why spend billions creating stealth bombers at all? In Part 3, we place these two giants head-to-head: stealth versus firepower, precision versus endurance, technology versus experience, and discover why America's oldest bomber may still be one of its most dangerous weapons.
Why has America still not retired the B-2 Spirit? Part 3. B-2 Spirit versus B-52 Stratofortress. If you place these two bombers side by side, most people would immediately assume the answer is obvious. The B-2 Spirit is newer, more advanced, more expensive, and dramatically more sophisticated, while the B-52 Stratofortress first entered service decades before many modern pilots were even born. But in warfare, the most advanced weapon is not always the most useful, and that is exactly why both bombers continue to serve together. Let's start with firepower. This is where the B-52 becomes truly terrifying. The aircraft can carry an enormous amount of weapons: precision-guided bombs, cruise missiles, standoff weapons, conventional munitions, and nuclear payloads. In terms of sheer destructive capacity, few aircraft in history can rival the B-52. The B-52 was designed around one principle: bring overwhelming firepower to the battlefield. The aircraft acts as a flying arsenal, capable of launching devastating attacks from long distances and remaining on station for extended periods. But when we look at the B-2, everything changes, because the B-2 was never designed to carry the most weapons. It was designed to reach the most dangerous targets. The B-2 can penetrate heavily defended airspace, fly through areas protected by advanced radar networks, and strike targets that would be extremely difficult for other bombers to reach. Instead of relying on volume, it relies on access. Instead of overwhelming defenses, it bypasses them. Imagine a battlefield. The B-52 is the hammer. The B-2 is the scalpel. One destroys through power, the other destroys through precision. Both are lethal, but in very different ways. Then comes survivability, and this is where the B-2 holds a major advantage. modern air defense systems continue to improve. Long-range radars, surface-to-air missile batteries, integrated defense networks, all designed to detect and destroy incoming aircraft. The B-52 generally avoids these threats by operating from safer distances, launching weapons without entering the most dangerous zones. The B-2 was created for the exact opposite mission. Its purpose is to enter those dangerous zones, to fly where other aircraft may not survive, and to strike strategic targets at the opening stages of a conflict. This capability earned the B-2 a unique reputation. Military planners often describe it as a door opener, because once the B-2 disables key defenses, other aircraft can follow. But every advantage comes with a price, and the price of the B-2 is enormous. Maintenance, stealth coatings, specialized facilities, operational costs. Everything about the aircraft is expensive, far more expensive than operating a B-52. That is one reason America never built hundreds of B-2s. The aircraft was simply too costly. Meanwhile, the B-52 remained affordable, reliable, and remarkably adaptable, even after decades of service. So who wins? The answer is surprisingly simple. Neither, because they were never meant to replace one another. The B-52 dominates through firepower and endurance. The B-2 dominates through stealth and precision. Together, they form one of the most powerful bomber combinations ever assembled. But this creates an even bigger mystery. If the B-52 remains so useful, why keep the B-2? And if the B-2 is so important, why is America already developing the B-21 Raider? Because the answer lies not in technology alone, but in combat experience, real missions, real wars, and operations that only the B-2 could perform. In Part 4, we follow the B-2 into Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya to discover the missions that proved why America still refuses to let the Spirit disappear.
Why has America still not retired the B-2 Spirit? The missions only the B-2 could do. In military aviation, there is one simple rule. Why has America still not retired the B-2 Spirit? Part 4. The missions only the B-2 could do. In military aviation, there is one simple rule. A weapon is only as valuable as its performance in combat. Not in simulations, not in laboratories, not on paper, but in real war. And this is where the B-2 Spirit proved its worth, again and again and again. The world received its first true glimpse of the Spirit's power during the Kosovo War in 1999. At the time, NATO was conducting air operations against Yugoslavia. The region was protected by radar systems, surface-to-air missiles, and heavily defended strategic targets. Exactly the type of battlefield the B-2 had been designed for. The Spirit launched directly from the United States, crossed the Atlantic Ocean, entered hostile airspace, and struck high-value targets with remarkable precision. What shocked military analysts was not just the accuracy, it was the efficiency. A small number of B-2 bombers were responsible for a disproportionately large percentage of strategic target destruction. The aircraft had finally proven its concept. Stealth worked, and it worked in combat. Then came Afghanistan. After the attacks of September 11, 2001, the United States launched Operation Enduring Freedom. The distance involved was enormous, targets were scattered, and rapid response was critical. The B-2 answered the call, flying some of the longest combat missions in aviation history, crossing continents, delivering precision strikes, and returning home after missions lasting well over 30 hours. Very few aircraft on Earth could accomplish such a feat. The B-2 did it repeatedly.
Then came Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom. The opening phase of the war demanded something very specific: destroy critical targets immediately. Command centers, communication hubs, air defense systems. The kind of targets that determine whether a campaign succeeds or fails. And once again, the B-2 was among the first aircraft sent into action. Its ability to penetrate defended airspace allowed the United States to strike deep inside enemy territory from the very beginning of the conflict. The Spirit wasn't merely participating in the war, it was helping shape the battlefield itself. Years later, the pattern repeated in Libya. When heavily defended targets required immediate action, when risk levels were high, when strategic precision mattered most, the B-2 appeared once more. And once again, it delivered. This is why military planners often describe the Spirit as a first night of war aircraft. Because when the conflict begins, when defenses are strongest, and when mistakes are most costly, the B-2 is often one of the first assets called upon. And this reveals something important. The B-52 can deliver massive firepower. The B-2 can open the door. The B-52 can sustain the campaign. The B-2 can start it. One bomber supports victory. The other helps make victory possible. That is why the Spirit remains relevant. Not because it flies faster, not because it carries more weapons, but because there are still missions that few other aircraft can perform as effectively. And that reality has kept the B-2 alive for decades. Yet, time eventually catches every machine, even legends. And today, a new bomber is emerging from the shadows, the B-21 Raider, a successor built for the next generation of warfare. A successor many believe will eventually replace the Spirit. But if that is true, why is America still investing in the B-2? Why not retire it immediately? And could the B-52 actually outlive both of them? The answers lead us to the final chapter of this story, where we uncover why some aircraft become more than machines. They become indispensable.
Why has America still not retired the B-2 Spirit? Part 5. The Final Verdict. At the beginning of this documentary, we asked a simple question. Why is the B-2 Spirit still flying? Why hasn't the United States retired one of the most expensive aircraft ever built? Now, after examining its history, its missions, and its unique capabilities, the answer becomes clear. The B-2 Spirit still exists because there are missions that only the Spirit can perform. For more than 30 decades, the aircraft has served as America's strategic key, a weapon capable of reaching targets that many other aircraft cannot. A bomber designed to strike first, strike deep, and strike with precision. The Spirit was never intended to replace every bomber. It was designed to perform the hardest missions, the missions that determine the opening hours of a war, the missions where failure is simply unacceptable. That is why the B-2 remains valuable, not because it is the newest aircraft, not because it carries the largest payload, but because it possesses a rare combination of stealth, range, and strategic reach. Even today, few aircraft in the world can match that capability. Yet, the future is already arriving. The B-21 Raider is entering service, a new generation stealth bomber designed for a new generation of threats, more modern, more efficient, and built for the conflicts of tomorrow. But replacing a legend is never easy. The United States understands this, which is why the B-2 will continue serving alongside the B-21 for years to come, because experience matters, combat-proven capability matters, and strategic reliability matters. Meanwhile, another bomber continues to surprise military analysts around the world, the B-52 Stratofortress.
an aircraft that first flew in the early years of the Cold War, yet remains operational today, and according to current plans, may continue flying well into the 2050s. Think about that. The B-52 may outlive multiple generations of aircraft, perhaps even outlive bombers that were designed to replace it. And that reveals an important truth. Military aviation is not always about replacing the old with the new. Sometimes it is about combining strengths. The B-52 delivers overwhelming firepower. The B-2 delivers stealth penetration. The B-21 represents the future. Together, they form the backbone of American strategic air power. So, should the B-2 be retired? The answer is simple. Not yet, and perhaps not for quite some time, because as long as the most difficult missions still exist, the Spirit still has work to do. But America's bomber story does not end here, because there is another aircraft, one unlike the B-52, one unlike the B-2, an aircraft born from speed, an aircraft born from Cold War competition, an aircraft that was canceled, revived, and transformed into one of the most recognizable bombers ever built. It could fly faster than sound. It could carry enormous payloads, and it became one of the most controversial aircraft programs in American history. Its name was B-1 Lancer. Why was the B-1 canceled? Why was it brought back? And why does America still rely on this supersonic bomber today? The answers may be even more surprising than the story of the B-2. Join us in the next documentary on Eagle War Machine. Mission continues.